So you mentioned a few times, about the aches and pains from the game. What advice would you give to young athletes about taking care of their bodies, taking care of their mental well-being, and following their dreams?
As far as taking care of their bodies, I think there's so much information now that there's almost no excuse not to. For example, don't let, especially that mobility, that stretching, if it's got to be yoga, if it's got to be something else, another way, but you've got to do it. Like, it's just one of those ways that it just helps you with your longevity.
Right.
I used to do my mobility work and stuff, but then I wasn't real strict with my stretching and everything else, and I ended up paying for that, in terms of back pain and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. But the kids right now, they're luckier than we were, because the information almost gets thrown at them, but they can't get away from it. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely say, if there was one thing I would change, I would have had a stricter stretching program, and I would have definitely been on that every day. Mm-hmm. Sorry, what was the other question?
So taking care of their bodies,
yeah.
Taking care of their. So what advice would you give about taking care of their bodies? You spoke on that. Taking care of their mental well-being and following their dreams.
The mental side of it is, don't try and be a man about stuff. And I mean, don't try and take everything on at once. There's a reason. Everyone is in the same boat. We might not express it outwardly to each other, but the fact is that everybody is going through the same things. And one of the things I struggled most with was, I don't even know if we have enough time, but one of the things I struggled most with was bulimia, which is an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. And I got that from NFL Europe because I had spent so long getting myself into shape. I was at a combine. I ran a 4.49, which is inconceivable for me because of my size. Mm-hmm. And I bench pressed 28 times. And I had such an amazing camp once. And at the end of it, one of the coaches would say to me, Mike, and this is not including my talent and what I had just shown, but he would say to me, Mike, everything's good, but you need to lose about 10 pounds.
After all that, still.
I was like, what? I was like, but, and bear in mind, this time I had muscles coming out of my ears, and I was like, what do you mean? And they say, yeah, you need to lose about 10 pounds. It's not about your skills. It's not about what you're doing. It's about the optics. Optics? Say, and they say it in football, the look test. That you have to pass the look test. Mm-hmm. And if you don't pass the look test, then people are going to look at you a bit differently.
Right.
I was like, all right. So it didn't happen, the eating disorder didn't occur then. It was triggered then. But it happened later on when I was away from football and I was gaining weight, and I was like, oh, I can't gain this weight. So then I'd eat, and then everything would come back up again. I'd force it back up again. Mm-hmm. So I won't go time and everything. I won't go too deep in that, but I'll just say don't let things pile up too much,
right,
to the point where you can't go back anymore.
Right.
You've got to. Nothing is embarrassing. And that's the one thing I learned as well, about going through all these sessions and stuff like that. It's there isn't anything that's embarrassing, anything that can't be talked about, because the likelihood that someone else or your friend or your confidant, whoever you think, the likelihood that they have gone through similar is very high. We all live the same life, and we see it in memes and stuff. Memes talk about who did this, and everyone's saying, "Oh, I did that too." We're all living the same lives. That's a fact, that we're all living very, very, very similar experiences. Mm-hmm. So my advice to them would be talk to people, find a group, find a group of guys that you trust, that you care about, that you love, and talk it out with those guys, and don't let it go too far.
Right.
Otherwise, it can go down a dangerous path. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And was that advice, right? Advice on the dream, following their dreams.
Right.
Do what I did. Don't discuss it with people. when you get an opportunity and someone says you want to do this, the worst thing you can do is then I need to talk to my family. I need to talk to my girlfriend. It's like, they're gonna say no because the opportunity is probably taking you away from them.
Right. I know what you mean.
Right. So it's a very selfish thing from them to say don't go because you're leaving us. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like I didn't confine anybody. When I had an offer to a team, I told my mother. I said, "Mom, this team just offered me. I'm probably gonna sign and go." And she was like, "All right, you know best." You know, like because you do. Mm-hmm. You know, like inwardly, you know what's good for you, mm-hmm. Right? And you know what you want. Mm-hmm. You want to travel, you want to do this, you want to do that. So, you know, maybe it's bad advice to say don't talk to anybody, but like at the end of the day, it's your decision,
right? And
let your decisions be your decisions, and not be influenced by, you know, someone else telling you. But you know, I need you, or you know,
right?
You know, right. Let your decisions be your decisions,
right? And okay, so when you look back at your journey up until now, which lessons do you think would be the most important to share with someone else on a similar path as yours?
I mean, there are lessons like don't follow relationships. Mm-hmm. Follow what's gonna get you further in your career. Follow what's going to get you noticed. Because at the end of the day, we're all a little bit narcissistic in the sense that we want to be noticed and we want to be seen at the highest level. Mm-hmm. The reason why I say that is I talked about it before when I was in Kiel, how I should have kept the group together. I felt like I was the glue that could have kept the group together and brought most of the guys back for another year and gone at another championship. But I kind of saw a friend of mine who was from Helsinki, and I kind of got, you know, he kind of talked me into it and how cool it was and everything else. I was like, all right, you know, it's a new, completely new country, completely new city. And that's always been my MO, like just to see different, see different cities. And when he'd offered me that, I said to myself, yeah, why not? But deep down, I knew I wanted to come back to Kiel. They had made me a great offer, probably the best offer that I'd had, but I still said no. Whereas I should have said, all right, we need that. We need redemption. We need to come back and win this championship that we let slip. And if we keep the same team, the same core of imports and the same core of the German talent that we had, like we're gonna win it. And I kind of let friendships kind of come in the way of championships, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. So, I know
I'd always say just always follow always follow what you want, like what your main aim was to move out there in the first place. Mm-hmm. But when that championship is there, like go and get it,
right?
And not follow just because you're gonna have a good time somewhere else, or you could have a good time somewhere else, and you follow that instead of following the reason why you came there in the first place.
Okay. All right, so we'll wrap things up with this final question. You mentioned off camera, in our conversations that you're currently in the process of writing a book.
Yeah.
And I understand you addressed some of the topics that we addressed in this interview in your book. You addressed them in more detail in your book. What are some of the other topics you address in your book, and when can we expect it to be available to the public?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to write the book was two reasons. One, as a kind of, a realistic version of what happens over in Europe. Like when you come over from America, for example, or from other European countries. Some of the things that you might be able to expect. Because I will, in the book, some of the things I write about aren't too dissimilar. I'm sure we have some similarities that when you read my book, when you look at your own career, you would say, I can relate to that. Right. That kind of similar thing happened to me. And so I wanted to have the book for them, and I wanted to have the book for friends of mine who haven't necessarily been through the paths and the stories that I've been through and don't know them, for them to kind of get to know them as well and get to know me a little bit better. So the book kind of touches on what I just talked about a moment ago about the bulimia and the bulimia in athletes. Something that, especially men, something that's not talked about. It's more seen in, supermodels, what I mean? Which is the reason why it was embarrassing to talk about it. Because if I told someone, a guy who's, a certain 240 pounds and filled with muscles, and I told you that I was bulimic, I'd get laughed at 10 years ago. Maybe not so now, but 10 years ago I'd have been laughed at.
Right.
So I talk about that. I talk about my experience with, abortions, I guess, and what my mindset was about abortions, and my experiences with an abortion that nearly happened in my life. I also talk about my experience within the football teams, the friendships that I created. The majority of it is concentrated on the outside of football. I kind of touch on some games and stuff like that, and some of the memorable games that I had, and some of the memorable situations.
Right.
But most of it is talks about the relationships on the outside with not only football players, but that general public too.
Okay.
As well, stuff like that. There's a lot of cultural things that go on in there. People not understand, like people meeting, we talked about before about me being the first black person that some people had met before, and about my time in NFL Europe, which is a pretty big chapter. My time in Russia, which is a very interesting chapter. But yeah, it just talks about everything that we kind of go through here. It's not just about playing games and partying and drinking. Right. There's a lot of emotional things that happen in and around being an import player. Right. And it's just to give people more of an insight as to what happens in our lives. Okay. Yeah.
And so when can we expect it? Right?
I think it's gonna be. I plan on it being out in the summer.
Okay.
Probably my birthday is in August, so probably around then, probably before, probably the end of July.
Okay.
I've still got to get it edited.
Okay.
But from what I've heard, from the response I've had so far, I've had about 20 people read it. Most of the people were surprised that I could write so well, which I was quite offended by. But I guess, again, that's what people expect. People expect you to only be able to do one thing, right?
Right.
As a football player, people expect you to be only one-dimensional. Like, right. You can do football, or you can talk football. What about everything else? Which is one of the things that we have to fight with. We have to fight with those stereotypes.
Right.
Okay, I'm more than just, like LeBron says, he's more than an athlete. I'm multi-dimensional. So, I enjoy writing. I enjoy reading. So it was just an easy transition, easy thing to do. And I encourage anyone, even if you're not going to publish it, it's very therapeutic to write. I wrote a story, a letter to my father, for example. I didn't send it. I might send it. I don't know. But all the hate that I had for him, I talk about this as well, like in the book, like the relationship between me and him. All the hate that I had for him immediately went, just because I'd got everything out on paper. So I encourage anyone, like just to write more, like write their feelings more.
Yeah.
And you probably end up being more free from it.
Yeah. The book sounds very interesting, so I'm excited about when it comes out.
I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna sit down and have a read of that. Yeah. But Michael, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the time to do this interview with us. Thanks for inviting us into your home. Yeah. We really appreciate it. It was a very, very interesting interview, and we really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys, and good luck with you guys' adventures too in the future as well.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.